Good evening, and welcome back. Tonight the desert remembers. The wind moves low across the dunes, whispering the name of a god carved not from flame or light, but from shadow. Before we begin, if you're listening from a different country, tell me your country and the time where you are down below in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's tuning in from. And if this story helps you relax, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who loves a good bedtime tale. Your support is honestly what motivates me to keep creating these magical and sometimes spooky stories for everyone. Long before men built temples or carved prayers into stone, there was only the silence of the desert, endless, golden, and hollow as eternity. The air shimmered with heat, carrying the scent of sand and dusted myrrh. The sun burned high, but its light could not pierce the deep void beneath the earth. And it was there, in that sacred darkness, that Anubis was born. His mother was Nephthys, the goddess of twilight, the one who lived between day and night, wife to Set, but drawn to the light of Osiris. From that forbidden union came a child not meant to be born in the realm of gods or men. When Nephthys looked upon the child, his skin was darker than night, his eyes glimmered like stars reflected in black water, and his cry echoed through both worlds, the sound of endings and beginnings entwined. But fear filled her heart. The child was a secret, a living echo of betrayal. To keep him safe from Set's wrath, Nephthys wrapped him in linen and left him upon the sands beneath the veil of night. The desert was cold then, the wind sharp as blades, carrying the scent of metal and salt. The stars watched in silence. Whisper. Even the jackals paused their howls, sensing something divine stirring beneath the dunes. Osiris found him. The god of life and renewal walked through the desert, his footsteps silent on the sand. When he came upon the crying infant, he saw not a curse, but a gift, the embodiment of balance. Osiris lifted the child into his arms, his warmth shielding the boy from the bitter wind. The sand settled, the stars blinked brighter, and the air filled with a faint perfume of lotus and myrrh. In that moment, destiny shifted. Anubis grew beneath the gaze of Osiris and Isis, nurtured in secrecy and reverence. He did not laugh as other divine children did. Instead, he listened. He listened to the wind, to the quiet hum beneath the world, to the heartbeat of souls as they drifted between the realms. In his eyes was the reflection of both dawn and dusk, a being made to walk where light meets shadow. The gods watched him with awe and unease. He spoke little, but when he did, his voice carried the tone of eternity, soft, calm, and infinite. It was said that when he looked upon the dying, their fear would fade. His gaze was not cold, it was merciful, steady as the stars. And though he was born from sorrow and secrecy, the world began to change around him. Jackals gathered where he walked, their eyes gleaming like embers. The sand shifted to form strange symbols in his path. The moonlight bent gently toward him, as though recognizing one of its own. The desert began to hum, a sound only the gods could hear. It was the sound of purpose awakening. One night, under a black sun veiled by storm clouds, Anubis stood alone atop a dune. The air was thick with the scent of rain and dust, a rare breath of life over endless death. He raised his hand, and the storm calmed. The wind stilled. The sky opened, and for the first time, lightning struck the sand, fusing it into glass. From that glass, a faint reflection appeared, the face of the boy, half human, half divine, eyes filled with galaxies. The gods would later say that on that night, death itself learned its name. The desert was never silent again. It remembered his birth, the way the earth had trembled, the way even the stars had paused their eternal march. From that moment onward, the boundary between life and death had a guardian, not cruel, not vengeful, but patient, eternal, and kind. And so from betrayal and shadow, Anubis was born, the child who would one day guide all souls through the quiet gates of forever. The wind shifts again now, brushing over the sand like the whisper of an ancient memory. The stars shimmer faintly as if bowing to the one who walks between worlds. This was the beginning, the first heartbeat in the endless story of Anubis.
Anubis grew, not in palaces or temples, but beneath the open sky, among shifting sands that whispered to him like living things. The days were endless light, golden and fierce, and the nights were rivers of stars stretching beyond sight. The desert was not empty to him. It was alive, humming with invisible breath. When the wind passed, he could hear voices in it, soft, distant murmurs, like memories caught in the grains of sand. They spoke of life and endings, of forgotten kings and nameless wanderers, of prayers carried away by time. The boy listened, always listened. He walked barefoot upon the sand, feeling its warmth in the day and its chill at night. The texture shifted beneath his feet, fine, soft, almost like water. And sometimes, when the moon was high, he would pause and look toward the horizon, where dunes rolled like waves frozen in gold. There was peace in it, the peace of things that do not need to move to live. At dawn, the desert glowed with soft amber light. The air was dry, but smelled faintly of crushed sage and myrrh carried from faraway lands. The sound of distant jackals echoed across the plains, low and mournful, yet somehow comforting. They watched him from afar, their eyes catching the fire of sunrise. Anubis did not chase them. He nodded, and they understood. It was said that the jackals became his companions, guardians of the hidden and the lost. He began to understand that death was not a thing to be feared. It was a rhythm, a returning. When a bird fell from the sky, he knelt beside it, touching its still feathers with gentle fingers. "Rest," he would whisper, his voice barely more than air. The breeze would stir, carrying the scent of dust and fading life, and the silence that followed was deep, but not empty. It was full of presence, with memory. The gods saw him wander the dunes and wondered what kind of child could find beauty in such stillness. Osiris smiled in quiet pride, knowing that the boy carried a piece of eternity in his heart. Isis watched from the rivers of the Nile, her tears glinting in the sun, for she understood that the child was bound to a destiny too vast for even the gods to bear. As years passed, Anubis's form began to shift. His eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight, and the shadows seemed to bend toward him as though seeking comfort. The people who wandered the desert at night spoke of seeing a tall figure walking under the stars, a jackal's head outlined in silver, his footsteps leaving no trace. Some fled in fear, others knelt in reverence, but those who listened, truly listened, said that when he passed, the air grew still and soft, and the scent of lotus followed, faint but divine. He learned the rhythm of the desert, the pulse of the earth beneath his feet, the soft thrum of the wind through hollow stones, the heartbeat of the dunes. And in that rhythm, he heard something more, the distant cry of souls, lost, wandering, uncertain. They did not scream, they called. It was the sound of longing, of wanting to be seen, to be guided. And so he followed their voices. He found the places where the sand swallowed villages and the wind carried the names of the forgotten. There he sat in silence, listening until dawn. When the first light touched the sky, he raised his hand, and the wind stilled. The voices quieted. Peace returned. And from that day, the souls of the lost began to follow him, not as a god to be worshipped, but as a companion who understood what it meant to be alone. The desert became his temple, the stars his ceiling, and the sand his altar. He spoke to no one, yet every grain beneath his feet carried his prayer. He was the balance between silence and sound, between the setting sun and the rising moon. And though he was still young among the gods, all creation began to feel his presence. The dying no longer feared the dark. The living began to understand that to end was not to vanish. It was simply to return. In that vast, silent world, Anubis found his purpose. He would walk where others feared to tread. He would guard what others could not see. He would be the voice in the quiet, the calm between heartbeats. The child of the desert had become its soul. The wind moves again, soft and slow, carrying the scent of sand in stillness. Somewhere, far away, a jackal howls beneath the moon, not in mourning, but in reverence. The night deepens. The story continues.
As the boy of the desert grew, so too did the shadows that followed him. The whispers that once came faintly on the wind now gathered in waves echoing through his dreams. They were the voices of the dead, restless, searching, drawn to the one whose heart could hear them. Every night, when the moon rose like a silver scar, the souls would gather around him, their forms like dust and starlight. Some wept without sound, others watched in silence. Yet all were waiting for something or someone to lead them home. One night, the air changed. The desert's rhythm stopped. Even the wind dared not move. From the horizon came a figure cloaked in black and green. The air smelled of damp earth and blooming lilies. It was Osiris, lord of the afterlife, king of the eternal fields. His eyes shone with sorrow older than the Nile. "You hear them," Osiris said, his voice deep as thunder beneath water. "The lost, the forgotten. They call to you because you were born of silence." Anubis bowed his head, feeling the sand swirl around his feet. "They do not rest," he said softly.
They wander without path, without light. Osiris stepped closer, the air trembling around him. Then give them what they seek, a guide, a path, a hand that does not fear the dark. And so it began. That night the desert opened its heart, a tear in the sand that glowed with faint blue fire. It was a gate to Duat, the realm beneath the world, where souls traveled after death. The air was thick with the scent of cedar and iron. The sound of unseen wings brushed the silence. Anubis looked down into that shimmering abyss, feeling the pull of destiny rise in his chest like a heartbeat. He stepped forward. The world shifted. The dunes vanished, replaced by rivers of shadow and golden sand that flowed like liquid light. The air was cool, humming with unseen energy. The walls of Duat rose around him, vast, endless caverns carved with glowing hieroglyphs that told stories of every life that ever was. Souls drifted like pale mist through the air, whispering prayers, regrets, names. Some clung to fragments of memory, a mother's face, a home, a song. Others were little more than flickers lost to the currents of eternity. Anubis walked among them, his presence calming the tremor in the air. The lost souls turned toward him, their whispers softening, as if recognizing the peace he carried. He raised his hand, and for the first time light touched the depths of the underworld. Not the harsh fire of the sun, but a gentle glow, silver and still. The souls followed that light, the shapes steadying, their paths becoming clear. From the darkness, voices of older gods murmured approval. Thoth, keeper of wisdom, recorded the moment in sacred script. Ma'at, goddess of truth, smiled faintly, her feather gleaming with quiet balance. Even Osiris, watching from afar, bowed his head. In that moment, Anubis was no longer a child of the desert. He was the guide, the psychopomp, the walker between worlds. His eyes reflected eternity, one holding the light of the moon, the other the shadow of the grave. He did not fear the silence. He embraced it. He built pathways through the Duat, bridges of silver dust where souls could walk safely toward judgment. He created resting places for those not yet ready to move on. And when they wept, he did not speak. He simply listened, for he knew that even in death, to be heard was a kind of mercy. Soon, even the living began to feel his presence, not as terror, but as calm. When someone passed, families would whisper prayers to the one with the jackal's face, asking him to lead their loved ones safely through the dark. Temples rose, not to worship power, but to honor peace. And thus, Anubis became the bridge between the sand and the shadow, between the living and the dead. He did not rule, he guided. He did not demand, he understood. In the silence of Duat, his footsteps echoed softly. The souls followed one by one, their lights fading gently into the eternal calm. Above, the desert wind sighed once more, carrying not grief, but gratitude. The child of the desert had become the keeper of lost souls. But the story doesn't end here, for even gods must face betrayal, and even guardians can bleed. The desert is still. Even the wind holds its breath.
The stars above the Nile seemed to tremble, as if watching a tragedy unfold beneath their ancient gaze. Osiris, the green-skinned lord of the afterlife, had brought peace to Egypt, teaching men how to grow grain, how to build, how to honor the balance of life and death. The land flourished under his rule, and the people sang his name as the river kissed the earth. But in the shadows, jealousy grew, like a serpent coiling around the heart of a god. It was Set, the red god of storms, his brother, the embodiment of chaos and fury. His eyes burned like sunfire, and his laughter cracked like thunder across the dunes. To him, Osiris's peace was weakness. To him, order was a cage that needed breaking. He watched as mortals bowed their heads to Osiris, and his anger brewed with every prayer that was not his. And so he plotted. In the silence of the desert, Set carved a coffin of unmatched beauty, black as the night sky, lined with gold, adorned with the constellations of the dead. It shimmered beneath torchlight, perfect, divine. He invited Osiris to a great feast, where gods and mortals alike gathered. The air was thick with the smell of roasted lamb and spiced wine. The laughter of men echoed under the stone arches. When the moment came, Set rose. His voice, smooth as oil, filled the hall. "A game," he said, "a gift. Whoever fits perfectly within this coffin shall have it as their own." The crowd cheered, unaware of the venom beneath his smile. One by one, the gods and men lay within it, too tall, too short, never perfect, until Osiris, humble and trusting, stepped forward. The lid closed. The laughter stopped. The sound of iron locks echoed like thunder. Set's eyes flared crimson as he sealed it shut, his roar shaking the hall. "Now you shall reign no more, brother." With a surge of power, he hurled the coffin into the Nile. The river swallowed it whole, its waters glowing faintly as it carried the trapped god away. That night, the world changed. The fields withered. The air grew heavy, still. The stars dimmed, and the moon turned pale. Even the dead stirred uneasily within Duat, sensing the silence that had replaced their king. And Anubis, the one who walked between the realms, felt the shift deep in his bones. His ears caught the faintest tremor in the wind, a cry beneath the current. The scent of lilies turned to rot. The balance was breaking. He followed the call through the night, his cloak whispering against the sand, his eyes gleaming with sorrow. Days turned to weeks as the coffin drifted. Through reeds and darkness it floated, carrying Osiris's still form. When it finally came to rest upon the shore, it lay hidden among the roots of a great tree, one that grew with unnatural speed, wrapping its trunk around the coffin like an embrace. Isis, wife of Osiris and goddess of magic, found it first. Her tears shimmered like molten gold as she broke through the wood and touched her husband's lifeless form. The air trembled with grief. She called for Anubis,
He came quietly, as he always did, the guardian, the guide, the son of shadow and silence. The scent of frankincense and myrrh followed his steps. When he saw Osiris's body, he bowed deeply, his jackal eyes dim with sadness. The balance is undone, but it shall not remain so. Set's fury grew when he discovered that Isis had retrieved her husband. In madness, he found the body and tore it apart, scattering the pieces across the deserts and rivers of Egypt. But even that cruelty could not defeat love. Isis searched every dune, every stream, gathering the pieces one by one, and beside her, silent, faithful, walked Anubis. His hands, though shaped by death, moved with tenderness as he helped her find what was lost. Together they found almost all but one, and yet it was enough. Anubis built a place of sacred quiet, where torches burned with pale blue flame. The air smelled of cedar, salt, and resin. Isis's magic filled the chamber like a soft hum, and for the first time in creation, the art of mummification began. With linen soaked in oils and prayers whispered to the still air, Anubis wrapped the body of Osiris. His hands moved with purpose, sealing each layer with the rhythm of eternity. As he worked, he spoke softly, his words like wind over stone. "You shall not decay. You shall not be forgotten. You shall rise again, and through you all who die shall live." The torches flickered, the scent of resin thickened, the air glowed faintly gold, and Osiris, the king of the green lands, took his first breath as ruler of the afterlife. From that day forward, death was no longer chaos. It was a passage, a ritual, a promise. Anubis became its keeper, the one who ensured that every body, every soul would be prepared for its journey with care and dignity. The jackal god, once a wanderer of silence, had given structure to the greatest mystery of all. But even peace born of death has shadows waiting beyond. The Duat would soon face judgment, and hearts would be tested against truth itself.
The realm of Duat shimmered with eternal twilight. The souls that drifted through its endless corridors no longer feared the dark. They walked toward a light that flickered gently in the distance, the chamber of judgment. After the betrayal of Osiris and his rebirth as lord of the underworld, balance had been restored, but something remained uncertain. The gods had brought order to death, but how would they decide what a soul deserved? Anubis stood before the golden gates of the Hall of Two Truths. His jackal eyes glowed faintly beneath the torchlight, calm, knowing. The air was cool, tinged with the smell of papyrus and sacred oils. He had walked among the living and the dead alike, and he had seen their hearts, full of love, cruelty, fear, and hope. And he knew that the weight of a soul could not be measured by power or prayer, but by truth. Within the chamber stood Mot, goddess of balance, her feather pure white, shimmering like the first light of dawn. To her left sat Thoth, the scribe of wisdom, his reed pen hovering over a scroll of light, and before them a scale, vast and silent, forged from silver and gold. Its balance beam gleamed faintly, as if breathing. On one side, a single feather. On the other, the heart of the departed. The first soul came forward, a farmer from the valley, trembling. He had lived an honest life, giving grain to his neighbors, praying to the river. Anubis placed his heart upon the scale. The room held its breath. The faint sound of the wind outside mixed with the slow creak of balance. The air smelled of linen and lotus. The feather did not move. Equal. True. Mot smiled faintly. "She shall walk in the field of reeds," she said softly, and the soul, now radiant, passed into peace. The next, a thief, a liar. His eyes darted, his form flickering. His heart, when placed upon the scale, fell heavy, dragging the beam down with a sharp clink. The torchlight dimmed, and the scent of smoke thickened. From the shadows came Amit, the devourer, part lion, part crocodile, part hippopotamus. Her breath was hot, her eyes unblinking. She opened her jaws, and the heart was gone, the soul with it. Silence followed, heavy and final. Anubis did not smile, he did not weep, he simply bowed his head. To him judgment was not vengeance, it was balance. The world could not exist without truth, just as the night could not exist without the day. Every soul, every heart carried its own weight. He worked without rest. Thousands of souls came before him, one by one, their stories unfolding like river reeds in the wind. The sound of the scale creaking became the rhythm of eternity, light, heavy, balanced, lost. And with every judgment the duat grew brighter, fairer, wiser. At times, even the gods would pause to watch. Ra, the sun, who sailed across the heavens each day, would lower his gaze to the realm below, his golden light touching the scales with reverence. And sometimes, in the silence between judgments, Anubis would hear Osiris's voice, deep and distant. "You have given order to death, my son. You have given justice to eternity." Yet the work was not without sorrow. There were souls who begged, who wept, who clung to what they had been. Some hearts trembled beneath guilt so thick it made the air cold. Others glowed with warmth, their love outshining their sins. To each Anubis offered the same: silence, fairness, truth. No judgment was made in anger, no mercy given from blindness. The scale decided, and he obeyed. The Hall of Two Truths became sacred, a place of calm, not fear. The walls shimmered with hieroglyphs that told stories of life, death, and the lessons between. The air was filled with soft chanting, like wind through reeds. Torches burned with golden fire, and the scent of frankincense curled lazily toward the ceiling. Even the lost souls who had wandered for centuries began to find their way there, drawn to the soft glow of balance. In time, the people of Egypt learned of the ritual through dream and legend. They began to prepare their dead, not only for burial, but for judgment. They wrote prayers on papyrus, the book of the dead, instructions for the soul's journey. They carved the feather of Mot upon tombs. They placed tiny amulets shaped like Anubis upon the chests of their loved ones, whispering, "May he guide you truly." And when those prayers rose into the night, carried by the scent of incense and the hum of desert wind, Anubis would feel them. He would pause, lift his head, and listen. He never answered aloud, but somewhere between the stars and the sand, the prayers found peace. As centuries passed, the balance held strong. The living honored the dead trusted their guide. But balance, like all things divine, is fragile. And in time, a shadow began to stir once more. Set's jealousy was not gone. His rage slept beneath the dunes, waiting for its time. For while Osiris ruled the underworld and Anubis barred at its gates, Set longed for chaos to rise again. But before that storm, before the desert cracked open once more,
Anubis would create something everlasting, a ritual so sacred that even death could not undo it.
Long after Osiris was restored to his throne beneath the earth, the art of death was still young. The living knew only fear when the final breath came. They buried their dead quickly, their tears falling into the dust. But Anubis, the silent one, the watcher of hearts, understood that death was not the end. It was a passage. And a passage, he believed, deserved reverence. So he began to teach the sacred ways of preservation, the ancient ritual that would one day shape the destiny of every soul. In the quiet halls of Duat, beneath ceilings carved with stars, Anubis worked. The air was thick with the scent of resin and incense, of natron and salt. The flickering firelight made his shadow dance across the walls, his movements slow, deliberate. His hands, steady as stone, moved with care over the body before him, not with fear, but with love. For in this act he was not taking from life, he was honoring it. The room glowed with golden light. Linen cloths lay folded beside bowls of sacred oils. Frankincense for purification, cedar for protection, myrrh for eternal sleep. Anubis's voice, low and calm, whispered ancient prayers that shimmered faintly in the air like drifting smoke. From dust you rise, and to eternity you return. The sound of his voice echoed gently against the chamber walls, blending with the faint hum of the torches. When his work was done, he pressed a small golden amulet over the heart, the eye of Horus, symbol of restoration. The smell of lotus filled the room. The linen rustled softly as he wrapped it layer by layer, each one sealing away the decay of the flesh, preserving the memory of what once was. His touch was gentle, like wind over a river's surface. And when the final bandage was tied, the silence that followed was not of death, it was peace. The air around the body shimmered faintly with light, as though the spirit itself lingered in gratitude. Anubis stood still, the faint sound of his breathing echoing in the sacred dark. He placed his hand upon the forehead of the wrapped form and whispered, "Rest now. You are remembered." Osiris appeared beside him, cloaked in green and gold, his face calm yet proud. "You have turned decay into art," he said softly. "Through you the dead shall not fade. Through you time will not claim the soul." Anubis bowed his head, but he said nothing. For he did not seek praise, only purpose. The ritual spread across Egypt like a sacred wind. The priests of the living began to imitate the divine act, washing the dead with water from the Nile, anointing them with oils, wrapping them in linen. They whispered the same words Anubis had spoken long ago, believing that through their devotion the departed would awaken in the afterlife unbroken. The scent of resin and lotus filled their temples. The sound of soft chanting echoed beneath the sun. Even the poorest of families offered what they could: a flower, a carved figure, a prayer scratched into stone. For in their hearts they knew the truth that Anubis had revealed, that to care for the dead was not only to honor them, but to honor life itself. Time moved like a river through the ages. The desert grew and shifted, swallowing cities, revealing others. Kings came and went, their names carved in stone and forgotten by wind. Yet through it all, Anubis remained, the eternal embalmer, the silent guardian. The temples glowed with torchlight in his honor. Statues of black stone watched over tombs, their golden eyes calm, unblinking. And still he worked in Duat. For though men could preserve the flesh, it was Anubis who preserved the soul. He walked through the endless halls, touching each resting form with quiet reverence. The air there was cool, filled with the hum of eternity. The linen rustled softly when he passed, as though whispering gratitude. Yet even gods can feel the ache of solitude. There were nights when the duat grew too still, when the torchlight dimmed and the silence pressed close. In those moments, Anubis would gaze upward, to where the thin shimmer of the mortal world flickered above him. He would think of the mothers who whispered prayers over the bodies of their sons, of the kings who built tombs so that their names would live forever, of the shepherds who laid their dead beneath the stars with nothing but a song. And though he never wept, the air around him would grow heavy, as if the duat itself shared his sorrow. For all his power, Anubis was not a ruler, he was a guardian, a bridge between what is and what was. He never demanded temples nor sought thrones. His gift was gentler, to give peace to what had been broken, to give stillness to what had been lost. And so the promise was born, that death would no longer devour life, but preserve it, that memory, through the hands of the living and the silence of the gods, could become eternal. The duat slept peacefully for many centuries under his watch, but the desert winds never stay calm forever.
There are places even the gods do not often tread, places between the waking and the eternal, between the whisper of life and the silence of death. This is where Anubis walks. Neither of the living nor of the fully divine, he belongs to the threshold, to the endless desert that lies between both worlds. The air here is neither warm nor cold, but carries the strange stillness of eternity. The sand glows faintly beneath an unseen light, shifting like water when he passes. Every step leaves no mark, every sound folds back into silence. It is said that the desert between worlds is made from the forgotten, the prayers that were never spoken, the dreams that died before waking, the names erased by time. The scent here is bittersweet, resin, smoke, and something faintly metallic, like the breath of rain that never comes. Above him, the sky is vast and colorless, where stars drift like scattered memories. Anubis moves through this realm without hesitation. His golden eyes pierce the dark, searching for the souls who have lost their way, those who died in confusion, those who were not buried, those whose hearts never reached the scales of truth. These are the wanderers, the forgotten ones. They drift through the sands like pale smoke, their whispers soft as the rustle of reeds in the wind. When he finds them, he does not speak right away. He kneels beside them, his form outlined by the dim light of the underworld's horizon. His voice, when it comes, is like the low murmur of distant thunder. The path still exists, he tells them. You are not lost, only waiting to be seen. And with a gesture, he opens a doorway, a shimmer in the air, like moonlight breaking through still water. The lost souls, trembling with relief, step through and fade into peace. The silence that follows is not empty. It hums with quiet gratitude.
But there are others, souls that refuse to move on. Some hold tightly to anger, others to sorrow. The weight of their emotions presses against the air like heat before a storm. For them, the desert is endless, their own grief forming the dunes that trap them. Anubis does not force them forward. He simply waits. Days, years, centuries, time has no hold on him. He listens to their stories, though they repeat them endlessly, and when they are ready, when their rage softens into understanding, he leads them onward. Sometimes even he feels the ache of their pain, the echoes of wars, of lost loves, of dreams that never bloomed. The sound of crying children, the laughter of lovers long gone, all drift through this place, weaving themselves into the eternal wind. He walks through it all, silent, patient, unwavering. One night, or perhaps it was a century, he reached the farthest edge of the desert where the sand met the horizon of shadow. There he paused. Before him stretched a vast river of black glass, still and perfect, reflecting the faint light of stars. On its surface fluted the faces of the dead, each one calm, sleeping, waiting. The sight was beautiful and terrible. The air smelled of iron and lilies. The silence was almost alive. Osiris's voice reached him then, carried by the unseen wind. "You have done more than guide them," it said softly. "You have given them peace beyond death." Anubis closed his eyes. "Peace is never mine to give," he replied. "It is theirs to find. I am only the bridge." He knelt by the river's edge, dipping his fingers into the glassy surface. Ripples spread outward, each one glowing faintly gold. As they moved across the water, the sleeping faces began to smile, their forms softening into light before dissolving completely. The desert grew quiet again. Through the ages, Anubis continued this endless walk between the living and the dead, between chaos and order. His presence became myth, then memory, then symbol. The living carved his image on tomb walls, painted his eyes on coffins, whispered his name during storms, and though they could not see him, his shadow passed among them. The people said that when the wind blew gently through the reeds at dusk, it was Anubis walking, guiding unseen souls back to the river. When the torches flickered beside a body, it was his breath, blessing the passage. When a child dreamed of a black jackal with golden eyes who led them through light, it was his kindness crossing into their world. There were moments, rare and fragile, when even Anubis would pause to watch the sunrise above the living world. The soft golden light through the dunes, the faint rustle of wind over stone, the smell of the Nile rising in the distance. In those moments he remembered why he walked this endless road, not for the dead alone, but for the beauty of life that birthed them. He was not a god of endings, but of transitions, not of fear, but of passage. He carried every story within him, every laugh, every tear, every silence. And though eternity stretched before him, he never tired, for each soul guided was another flicker of balance restored. The desert between worlds remains even now, unseen, infinite, patient. And somewhere within it, beneath a moon that never sets, the sound of quiet footsteps continues.
Time has a way of burying gods, doesn't it? Civilizations rise, languages fade, temples crumble into sand, yet some names never truly die. Anubis, the silent guide, the guardian of the scales, still lingers in the edges of memory. Even as the world turns, even as neon lights replace torches, there's something in humanity that remembers him. The darkness between breaths, the peace after loss, the whisper that says, "You are not alone." Long after the great temples fell, people continued to feel his presence. In the shadowed corners of tombs, explorers felt an unseen weight, a calm, steady gaze that seemed to follow them. Cameras would flicker, lights dim, air thicken, not in threat, but in warning, in remembrance. Those who disturbed the dead without respect often spoke of dreams. Dreams of a black jackal standing at the edge of a silver river, silent, patient, watching, always watching. There was a story once of an archaeologist in the 1920s who unearthed an untouched chamber deep beneath the sands of Saqqara. Inside, the air was impossibly dry, the scent of old linen and myrrh heavy in his lungs. At the center of the chamber lay a sarcophagus, unmarked save for a single carving, the head of a jackal, eyes inlaid with gold. That night, as the man rested in his tent, he awoke to the sound of footsteps, slow, rhythmic, crunching through sand just beyond the canvas. He called out, but there was no reply, only a low, steady breath, as if something ancient stood listening. When he looked out, the desert was empty, but his footprints from earlier were gone, wiped clean, as though the sands themselves had been smoothed by a careful hand. He left the next morning, returning to the chamber one last time, and found the sarcophagus sealed again.
No one ever opened it after that. Perhaps it was superstition. Perhaps not. The modern world may have traded temples for skyscrapers, prayers for data, and incense for electricity. But the human heart still beats with the same rhythm. Death still comes. Loss still hurts. And in that space between the last heartbeat and whatever lies beyond, something ancient still walks. Anubis has simply changed shape, no longer worshipped in gold, but remembered in silence. In hospitals, when someone passes, there's often a moment, a hush that falls across the room. Machines stop beeping, voices quiet. That stillness is sacred. That pause is the modern temple. And somewhere, in that breath between grief and peace, one might almost feel the old god again, unseen, waiting, his presence as gentle as a shadow over still water. Artists still paint him, tattooists still ink his likeness onto skin, over hearts, over scars, symbols of protection, of acceptance, of strength.
They may not call him by name, but they understand his essence. He who guides, without judgment, who stands between chaos and calm. And dreams, yes, dreams still carry him. People across the world have described the same figure, a tall form with the head of a jackal, glowing eyes of gold, walking through corridors of starlight. He never speaks, but extends a hand. Those who take it say they wake with a sense of peace, as though something heavy has been lifted from their chest. And dreams, or something more. Perhaps gods never die because they are not bound to form, only to meaning. Anubis was never about worship or fear. He was about care. The care of the final journey, the tenderness of farewell, the dignity of remembrance. And as long as humanity remembers to honor its dead, to comfort its grieving, to face loss with reverence, then somewhere the God still walks beside us. Imagine him now, standing at the edge of a modern city, beneath electric skies and trembling stars, his golden eyes reflecting neon lights, his form half shadow, half memory. The wind moves around him, carrying the faint scent of old myrrh through the noise of the world. Cars pass, people rush by. None notice him, but he watches, always, the guardian of balance, quietly ensuring that even in this age of steel and signal, the scales of life and death remain in harmony. He does not need temples anymore. Humanity itself has become his shrine. Every act of kindness, every whispered goodbye, every hand that holds another's in grief, those are his offerings now. And when our time comes, when the world falls silent and the heart slows, we might find him, waiting, not with judgment, but with a calm nod, a soft voice, and a guiding hand toward the horizon of peace. The silent God still watches, not from above, but beside us.
The desert slept beneath a shroud of mist, its golden skin bathed in the pale glow of the dying moon. Time itself seemed to hesitate, as if even eternity held its breath. Beneath the dunes, deep in the heart of Duapt, the underworld trembled with a sound that was not quite thunder, not quite breath, but something older, something final. The scales, untouched for eons, were awakening. For countless ages, Anubis had guided others across the threshold, from life to silence, from memory to peace. But now, for the first time, the gods whispered that he would stand before the scales. The guide would be judged. The air shimmered with golden dust as Maat approached, her feather of truth glowing with quiet radiance. The chamber was vast and endless, its walls carved with the stories of every soul that ever lived. Each flicker of light was a memory, each shadow a heartbeat once lost. The scent of frankincense hung in the air, mingling with the faint sweetness of myrrh. Anubis stood still. His jackal eyes reflected the silver flames that burned along the pillows. The chamber was silent, except for the faint flutter of the feather in Maat's hands. Even Osiris watched from his throne of emerald stone, his expression unreadable, pride and sorrow intertwined. "Walker between worlds," Maat said softly, her voice like the wind through papyrus reeds. "You have carried the hearts of many, but now The scales must carry yours." Anubis bowed his head, the golden light tracing the sharp angles of his face. "If this is truth, then let it be weighed," he murmured. The scales unfolded, ancient and immense, 2 bowls of pure obsidian balanced upon a beam of light. One side held the feather of truth, glowing like dawn. The other awaited the heart of the god. From his chest, Anubis drew forth a sphere of soft white light, not flesh, not blood, but memory. It pulsed faintly, carrying the echo of every soul he had ever touched. When he placed it upon the scale, the chamber darkened, the air shivered, the scales tilted, then steadied. A long silence followed. The air was thick, with incense, with judgment, with the weight of unspoken eternity. Every god in the hall waited. Even the souls beyond the veil felt the pause, the stillness that rippled across all planes of existence. And then the feather glowed brighter, the beam of light trembled and slowly balanced. The heart of Anubis was equal to the feather of truth. Maat smiled, her eyes glimmering like stars on water. "Even the keeper of death carries no shadow heavier than truth," she whispered. Osiris rose, his voice deep and thunder soft. "Anubis, you have walked between the living and the dead, never asking, never faltering. You have carried sorrow without breaking. You have been the light within the dark. You are balance, and for that you are eternal." The chamber filled with golden wind, the walls of duat shimmered, their carving shifting to form a single image, that of Anubis standing between the scales and the stars, arms open, head bowed in peace. The other gods bowed their heads. Even the souls of the departed whispered his name like a hymn. But in that moment, Anubis did not smile. He simply looked at the feather, at the soft glow it gave. He felt something deeper than triumph, understanding. For he knew now that even gods could be measured, that purity was not the absence of darkness, but the balance betwixt it. He turned, gazing out across the endless fields of duat, where souls wandered beneath silver skies and rivers of light flowed endlessly toward the horizon. The air carried the scent of lotus blossoms and cool stone. Somewhere far above, the desert wind sighed, brushing over the dunes like a lullaby. And then Anubis spoke, his voice low and steady, echoing through eternity. "Every heart," he said, "no matter how heavy, seeks peace, even mine." The chamber faded into stillness. The gods vanished into starlight, and in their place only the faint sound of footsteps remained, soft, deliberate, moving deeper into the unseen horizon. The guide had been judged. The scales had balanced. The story had come full circle. But there are whispers still that sometimes on windless nights, when the desert is quiet and the stars burn cold, a shadow moves between the dunes, a figure of black and gold, walking slowly beneath the moon. He carries no torch, no staff, only silence. And those who see him do not run. They feel peace, because they know The keeper still walks, not as a god to be feared, but as a guardian to be remembered. And so ends the entire story of Anubis, the god who guided souls through the dark and found light within himself. Thank you for joining this journey. Until next time, may your night be calm, your dreams peaceful, and your heart light as the feather.